Welcome to the City of Indian Rock Beach Special City Commission meeting. This is Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stand for a few moments of silence. Thank you. Lauren, would you do the roll call, please?
Mayor Commissioner Costard.
Here.
Vice Mayor Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Commissioner King.
Here.
Commissioner Bigelow.
Here.
Commissioner Bond.
Here.
Thank you. I would like to request if anybody wants to make a public comment at this time. Any member of the audience may come forward, give their name, address, and state any comment or concern that they have regarding any matter over which the City Commission has control, excluding agenda items. All statements made to the City Commission shall be made to the City Commission as a whole, not directed to any individual City Commission member, and no personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks shall be permitted. No speaker shall be interrupted, and no debate shall occur between the speaker and the City Commission. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Brenna Weiner, and my home address is 1990 Abbey Lake Road, Clearwater, Florida. Before I start,
Could you get closer to the microphone?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all better.
Before I start, I would like to thank the mayor, city commissioners, and members of the public, but I think I'm the only member of the public. Tonight, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be here. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the city's finance director, Dan Carpenter. He met with me prior to discuss agenda item 2025-04, and he provided me with the key information I needed to develop my understanding of this agenda item. I am currently a student at St. Petersburg College and attending my last semester before receiving my bachelor's in public policy and administration. My assignment was to create a 4-step case study analysis and share my results with my local city commission meeting. Through my findings, this proposed budget served as the city's financial roadmap for this coming year. Each year, the budget of City of Indian Rocks Beach is tasked with adopting an annual budget. This budget outlines what services the city will provide its residents and how the city will fund and support those services, whether it's staffing their departments, maintaining the local parks, or investing in long-term infrastructure. The funding for these services comes from property taxes or other fees that allow these revenue sources to fund the many services the city offers to its residents. The proposed budget is balanced in all funds and was recently updated at the City Commission meeting on July 15, 2025. The City of Indian Rocks Beach continues its standing as one of the lowest ranking mill rates in Pinellas County at 1.73%. This budget is not just about numbers, it's a reflection of the community's priorities. The proposed budget not only supports the operational needs of the city, but also aligns with the city's desired values. Thank you for your time and continued support in making sure Indian Rocks Beach remains financially strong and well managed.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move on to the public hearings.
That's the good stuff.
Matt, would you read, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This item 2A is a public hearing, first reading of ordinance number 2025-23. 03, I'm sorry, ordinance number 2025-03. Adopting the final levying of an ad valorem taxes for the city of Indian Rocks Beach, Pinellas County, Florida, fiscal year 2025-2026, providing for notification of requisite government authorities and providing for an effective date This is a public hearing. And you can go ahead and open the public hearing, we're just reading by heading.
You mean you want me to open it up for public comment?
Yes.
I'll open this up for public comment. Since there's no one to make public comment, I will close the public comment.
And then I just want, as part of the hearing, to read into the record that the millage rate of 1.7300 will produce a total estimated tax collection of $3,574,070 based on a 97% collection rate. For the fiscal year 2025-26, annual rate of 1.7300 is 2.80% higher than the rollback rate of 1.6829. I have nothing further to add on this item.
Okay. Well, this, we're required to do the millage ordinance first before we get to the exciting stuff, which is the next ordinance and the budget. The only comments I'd like to add, just to, put this in context. We had a big hurricane in September. These are assessed values as of January 1st by the elected officials of Nelson County Property Appraiser. And I'm assuming that a pretty challenging year. And, we only went up 0.76 or less than 1% from our previous year assessment from the prior year. And that's a stark contrast from obviously the almost double-digit rise in property values that we've seen, on a market value basis throughout the city. I believe the former manager talked about this, and I'll just, allude to the fact as well that, next year, January 1st, 2026, assessments could also have impacts as a result of the hurricane as demolitions come to fruition, and or maybe, homes that have not been put back together, so ultimately, new construction, values brought back, it should be a recovery, but, as long as we're on the same page that, I don't think it's just a one-time impact to the city's taxable values. But with that said, the proposed budget that's been given, and the proposed millage rate that we're talking about now that was given to you by your former city manager, does maintain the same millage rate that we've enjoyed now for several years at 1.73. And that millage rate was actually lowered 3 times to get to 1.73 since 2017. I think that's important to note. That puts the city in a good position to show fiscal responsibility, to make attempts to lower the millage and control costs in a rising value market. So kudos to that. And the only other thing I'd like to just make sure we all know while we're talking about the millage, to reiterate the fact that our 1.73 mils is only 11% of our residents' total property tax bill, approximately. They're going to get about, they get about 16 mils total. The remaining after the 1.73 from us to run our city comes from the county, the school board, and the numerous special districts. Most prevalent probably for our residents would be fire. So that's all I have on the millage ordinance, but I'd be glad to answer any questions if there was anything for me.
Does anybody have any questions of Dan? No?
Nope.
Then I guess I'm looking for a motion.
I make a motion that we accept ordinance number 2025-03 as read.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor. Next item is business item 2B, ordinance number 2025-04. This is the first reading. An ordinance of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Pinellas County, Florida, adopting a budget for the fiscal year 2025-26, making appropriations and operating expenditures for the fiscal year 2025-26, and providing for notification of requisite government authorities and providing for an effective date. And this is a public hearing, so that's that you open it up for comment as well.
Does anyone have a comment about the 2025-26 budget? There is no public comment. I'm closing the public comment.
Okay, I'm not gonna go too far. I'll start by, real quickly, how did we get to September 10th? And a lot of that's spelled out in the budget calendar, and we've all participated in that. Of course, the budget starts way back in the spring. The manager works by putting out for residents' input, and he works individually with the commissioners, and then he works with staff and ultimately puts together a proposed budget. We workshopped that in July. There was, no changes, and then here we are tonight on first reading. It's an ordinance to adopt the millage, and it's an ordinance to adopt the budget. So we'll have a second reading in 2 weeks, and both items will be advertised in the Tampa Bay Times on Sunday, the 21st. And that's all the things you have to do to follow, along with other things, to actually levy property taxes under the state statute. Brenna hit some key items in her public comment before we started. This is a balanced budget in all funds. It also, in the general fund, allots to put some money back into the reserves that were utilized to get us through the hurricane, roughly about $370,000 of revenue in excess of expenditures. And while that's not a normal, budget that's probably presented where there's excess of, that kind of amount, it's probably important when you're talking about, a $2 million current loss if we don't get money back from FEMA. So 370 is a good step towards rebuilding that. We're still looking at, an area of 84% fund balance, even after the loss of those couple million, with the put back of this 370, if you will. So that's still a healthy spot. Thank goodness we came into the, big storm of 2024 with a healthy reserve, and that was, certainly put to the test. It helped us weather the storm, no pun intended. We basically, the budget is broken up into, the funds that account for the type of activity the city does. Everything outside of solid waste and large capital projects is accounted for in your general fund. And that's all laid out in the budget document, which, you've all seen. We brought a copy for everyone to look at tonight. But all the employees in both funds were proposed to get a 3% raise from the top down in this budget, which is good. Some of the other highlights of the general fund include there's a 7.53% increase in the Bells County Sheriff contract. That's our largest expenditure in our fund. It also accounts for the increase in the property and casualty, which was, we budgeted 5%. Last night we approved continuing that agreement with Public Risk Management. It came in at 5.8, just a small, that's an increase, difference we can live with. And then a 7.5% increase in medical insurance premiums for employees, which is their largest cost benefit. And I'd like to also mention one other thing for the general fund that Greg talked to you guys back in July. He's allotted for a transfer from a couple of years impact fee funds, which impact fee funds collect amounts when you have new construction that falls underneath the, the ordinance or the statutory provision. And typically, it's multimodal or traffic impact or recreation or whatever. So Greg thought that a good use of some of those funds that had built up a little bit was to deal with the tree issue at Chickasee Park and 10th Avenue, all the oaks that we lost. So that there's a transfer of $55,000 in there to help pay for the cost of removing those trees and putting new trees back in their place. And there was also a transfer of $35,000 from, I believe it's the multimodal impact fee fund, to help with the getting Cole Park paved around the park in anticipation of the discussion on Cape Park. And I think Greg went over that, so those are interesting highlights of this year's general fund, not normal transfers out of impact fee to use for specific uses that they would be allotted for underneath our code on impact fee. Moving to the solid waste fund, the second largest fund, it's an enterprise fund in accounting terms, meaning it has to be self-sustaining and runs completely on user fees. We run our own solid waste enterprise fund here, as everybody knows. We're kind of split down the middle with what we call commercial container and residential container. A lot of our commercial container involves actually condominiums where it's dumpsters, but about half the revenue comes from each type of those. Both of those are proposed to get a 5% increase, and that's been a fairly standard increase. We're a debt-free city in the general fund and the enterprise fund, the solid waste fund, so we pay as we go for our vehicles, and that's to help kind of build up. But more importantly, we got an 8% increase from Pinellas County for tipping fees we had to account for. That's the largest operating expense. A 3% increase in the recycling fee. Of course, 3% salary increase. So, costs do go up, rates go up, but the approach has been incremental increases annually rather than wait till it's all at one time. And, that's a more painful process. So I feel comfortable with the rate increase will help maintain that fund's viability and also prepare it for the purchase of the vehicles in the future. There was some interest from Commission to revisit the recycling agreement. That is certainly something that can be brought up at a time. That is a large operating expenditure within the solid waste fund. It's got all sorts of fun associated when you talk about it because, it gets emotional, but, there are financial dollars you can talk about. And, unfortunately, the recycle business in the last, let's call it 5 to 8 years, is kind of tripled in cost for what we have to pay, and of course that passed on to our customers. And there's also some debate that can be had about what's really being recycled and is there a better way to do that. But this budget accounts for recycling in its normal fashion, 3% increase per contract, and that contract I believe is a contract that either they can get out of or we can get out of within a fairly limited amount of time if that's the direction the city goes, and that may be something we can talk about at a later date. And then finally, I would just like to briefly talk about the capital improvement plan, which is another big part of the proposed budget. It's, the plan, the fund where you account for large capital projects that have typically specific funding sources that are limited to that. Your Penny for Pinellas, which is kind of a brick and mortar fund, or funding source. Your grants that are specific for SWIFT mud or other items like that. And the highlight for that will probably ultimately be the inclusion of the Aquafence grant, which wasn't in here because at the time it was proposed, it wasn't official, but that'll get put in. And the good news for that is most of that is covered with a 75% grant from the state. So albeit it'll be a large project in your capital funds that'll be added at a later date, 75% of it's coming from the state of Florida to pay for it. Some of the other items that are going on, it's a 5-year plan. As Greg has talked about in the past, I'll reiterate as well, the primary year is really next year when you look at the 5-year plan. That's more what we're going to do, and that's being appropriated and adopted tonight. We'll redo another 5-year plan every year, and you can kind of move stuff around as allotted. But there are some things in there where the Brown Park swing shade, the Cole Park irrigation and sodding to kind of get it back to what it looked like prior to the storm in terms of landscaping, and then finally the finality of LED lighting at Cole Park, where we have in other places. It's to finish off the skate park and the basketball court. So I think purposely there was a little bit of a slowdown in the capital projects, after the crazy year we had in 2024, but there are some things that are going to go on. And, in the out years, there's the accounting for a grant that, the biannual SWIFT bud grant. And there was also some discussion from Commission during the budget process about, can we do more stormwater if we had a stormwater fee? Well, of course, if we had a stormwater fee, we could, but we do not, and that makes us very unique. We've done the stormwater we've done and kept a good flowing system by utilizing general fund dollars, penny for Pinellas dollars, or getting money through grants. And, you know, I've been here long enough to know that we used money even from BP Oil, for example, and we used money from the sale of the sewer system way back in the day as well. So, you know, we've had some funding that we've come in and we've utilized it very prudently, if you will, towards capital projects. But, you know, without things like that going forward, remember, not too long ago, we were mandated by the state to do a stormwater study, which, you know, ultimately, what would be the stormwater projects you would do to, you know, completely, you know, do everything that's needed in your city. And I believe that was around 2021, and the 2021 dollars, that was like a $16 million undertaking. And we got started with that with, it's called like ARPA, or, you know, stimulus money basically from the federal government we got a few years ago. We spent about $2.1 million, and Commissioner Bigelow knows very well because it was pretty much all across the street from his house. So that gives you an idea. That project alone was, you know, those two projects in Harbor Drive were in excess of $2 million. So that kind of gives you an idea if you know. But anyway, stormwater, that's a discussion for later. There's lots of ways to do stormwater fees, and we have 23 other taxing entities in our county to look at and see how they do it when it's time to talk about that. And you know, I just like to thank the commission for their support with the budget development process. I think hopefully it's transparent, it allows participation from them. I think the process also allows input from the public when they so choose. You know, a little bit of a different year with the storm, but I firmly believe, I believe this is a well-balanced budget that was thought out by the previous city manager, and, you know, I recommend its approval. But I've got any questions if you have any. Sorry, I didn't turn my phone off.
Does anybody have any questions of Dan? I just want to thank you, Dan. You make the budget process so easy because it's clean, like you said, it's transparent, it's very clear, and actually, I was absolutely shocked that we ended up not having to raise the ad valorem tax because of the hurricanes. And I know that may not be true next year, but at least we've got another year.
Yeah, great comment.
Yeah, before we have to think about that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, again, you know, it's not a real hot topic normally, but certainly I think we do provide a lot of transparency and the opportunity for anyone that does want to talk about it.
And obviously they do.
Oh, well,
I'm,
yeah,
you
let's
know,
do this.
I have my one, two, you know, we have some folks occasionally that'll, you know, through email or call, and I've got a couple residents in town that when they get their trip notice, they typically call me because our phone number's on the bottom.
Yeah.
And first thing I do is go back to my very beginning of my speech and talk about, well, you do realize you're talking to the 11%, right? And a lot of times it's funny, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, if you want to talk about the 11% of your trim, I'm your guy, let's talk about it. I'm geeky about that, I'll talk about it all day. And they go, usually they're like, no, give me the phone number for the county or the school board. You know, they realize that, you know, the other 14.5 mills are coming from somewhere else. And, so, yeah, it should be that way. I can't take all the credit. Certainly, your former city manager worked hard to put a document that had what it needed into it, but also, you know, kept it to where it wasn't overwhelming. The average person could hopefully pick it up and read certain sections and kind of get an idea about where the money's coming from, where it's going, and the philosophy and the policy. So, but thank you. I've certainly enjoyed being your budget guy for the time I've had. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ready?
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we accept ordinance number 2025-04 at its first reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Aye.